Inside Sports Network has partnered exclusively with 6of6 Golf to bring you a great way to track your lineups, calculate your chances of winning in real time, and analyze your contest to find out how you're building and what you can do better, whether you're looking to see how much that busted chalk play really hurt you or how your bargain golfer is helping your lineups cash. 6of6 is a tool you need. Over time, 6of6 builds a picture of how you play, who you're typically overweight on, and your ownership against the rest of the field. So there's no more guesswork. 6of6 is not an optimizer or a projection site. It's a way to track your lineups and know exactly what's happening to your money in real time. Track your lineups live with real time projections. Learn about how you build so you can get better week after week. More features are being added all the time. They just added a bunch of new stuff in the last couple of weeks. So head on to sixofsix.golf and make sure you enter that promo code ISN to get you a discount. An example of how it works in real time, like this week for me, I'm doing okay. I have to have some things go my way for it to be a good week. And there are easily a couple things that could happen where it ends up being a week where I don't lose all my money, but I'm like minus 200, minus 300. Both of my single entries are 5of6s. I have a couple good 20 max, or excuse me, $10.18 max 6of6s. And like I know with 6of6 heading into Sunday, this is what I love. It's like if you're a DraftKings player and you're really looking at trying to, I guess, increase your sweat equity, trying to get smarter at while you're watching golf, figure out what needs to actually happen for you to win money or lose money. 6of6 does that so well in a way that I haven't seen, any other place do. So, for example, like my best lineup right now, which is 59th in the 18 max, only 3% of lineups ahead of me have Christian Bezuidenhout. So like I'm highly, highly leveraged on if Christian Bezuidenhout goes low tomorrow, that's like best case scenario for me. Now, Hideki Matsuyama, Jordan Smith, 35% of those lineups have those guys. Alex Smalley, Ben James, Cameron Young, that's like 10 to 25%. And I know that 67% of lineups ahead of me have Tom Kim. 50% of them have Michael Brennan. Good on you if you played Brennan. That was a great play. 45% have Davis Thompson. So, like, I know immediately, if Tom Kim or Michael Brennan wins, that's worst case scenario for me. I'm not winning shit if Tom Kim or Michael Brennan wins. The lineups ahead of me are going to score higher. And lineups behind me are probably going to pass me as well. Same thing with Davis Thompson, who I did not play in DFS. I do have as an outright. So I would be more than happy if Davis Thompson won the golf tournament, but it would not be a profitable outcome for me in DFS. So, like, that's what's so great is like I know with and that's one of the 6of6s. I have a couple that are a little bit different, but like I can just look immediately and figure out, okay, I've got tremendous leverage on Alex Noren, who I also have outright. That's best outcome for me. Lee Hodges, Jordan Spieth, Ben James, a little bit on Hideki, and Alex Smalley and Bezuidenhout. So what I love about that is I know what I need. I don't really even look at DraftKings when I'm sweating. I just look at 6of6 because, like, why would you look at DraftKings when 6of6 has way more information for you in real time and gives you actually win projection? So 6ofsix.golf, make sure you type in code ISN. And It's a wonderful, wonderful app. It'll change the way you play DFS for sure. It's like, tracking on Bet365 and how tracking on Bet365 is so much better than using the PGA Tour app. And anyone that goes to Bet365 is like, it's a total life changer. I'm never going back. It's the same thing of Six of Six. Like if you're playing DFS and haven't used Six of Six while you're playing golf DFS, I promise you're never going to go back. So sixofsix.golf, typing code ISN. I don't have much else on the Wyndham, you know, outrights for me. I've got a, Davis Thompson and Alex Noren are in good possession. They're around the lead. Let's look at their exact win percentage that Data Golf gives them, because I would imagine that my win percentage is probably around 1-4 tomorrow. Less. More like DT 16%, Alex Noren 9%. So Data Golf's giving me a 15% chance to hit an outright, which feels about right. Michael Brennan 25% chance, Bo Hostler 22% chance, Tom Kim 22% chance. I'd probably flip that and say it's Tom Kim's to lose, but it's a Sunday on the PGA Tour. Hostler's gained 7.5 putting. Brennan's gained 7 putting, and Tom Kim's gained 6 putting. Alex Noren's gained 6 putting. Davis Thompson has gained 10.9 on approach and lost 1.7 putting. So if you're playing the putting is the least sticky stat from round to round, who has the highest ability to flip the putter based on the way that they're striking the ball, it would be Davis Thompson and Alex Smalley. Alex Smalley would be a very good outcome for me in DraftKings, although I do not have the order. So, hopefully we get that from Davis Thompson. I will say there is a bit of noise in, the 10.9 strokes that he's gained on approach this week. He gained 2 strokes alone on approach from that hole out. But to be honest, even if you take that away, he's still at +9 on approach. So I stand corrected, DT. You really have been flushing at a wonderful level and have not made a lot of putts, as I know from my group chats who also have DT and have been tracking him a little bit closer than I have. Let's I don't have much more on the Wyndham. I feel pretty comfortable diving right into St. Jude's, which is what we're all here for anyway. So this is the first event of the FedEx Cup Playoffs. The top 70 make the field, and we pretty much have like most of the field. I was able to run a model with the projected standings as of yesterday. There are a couple there are a couple things that could happen at the back end. A couple like uncertain spots. Koiven looks like he's going to get there. He's 87% chance. Matty Schmid, Brennan and Davis Thompson are kind of in the need to win to get in zone. But for the most part, like the model that I have, the 70 players that I looked at, I would imagine there's at most maybe 3 or 4 different names for us to run on Monday based on what we're looking at now. And a lot of those players are not playing the Wyndham. So I was able to dive pretty deep on them and can do a nice little early lean section for us, because I think it's a great field and will be a fun betting board. So the big thing with Memphis, because the golf course has gotten some changes, and we'll talk about all of those changes last year was the first year of the renovation. So, it's not like these are new changes for 2026. These are changes that happened before last week's tournament and debuted last year. So we do have some new data to take a look at based on the changes, but a couple of the macro points to get off with TPC Southwind is in Memphis, Memphis, Tennessee. A little bit of an alliteration there, or Freudian slip, thinking about how hot it's going to be. It's going to be plenty hot in Tennessee as well this time of year. The heat index here, I actually took a look at warmer conditions. Like, I was able to find through the wonderful help of Claude, like 90-degree weather stuff. And I looked at some of those splits as well, because it's a scorcher here every year. I think many remember the image of Lucas Glover, sweating through his pants. And it's going to be another one of those weeks where it's plenty hot in Memphis, which kind of raises the question, why are we going to Memphis in the middle of August? Your guess is as good as mine, but it looks like the PGA Tour in the future is committed to perhaps at least removing one of the Southeast events, whether it's East Lake or TPC Southwind. I would prefer TPC Southwind be moved to a regular event. But we'll talk about East Lake and TPC Southwind and how they feel a bit redundant as playoff events. It's a par 70 measuring 7,288 yards. The fairways are zoysia grass measuring 25 yards wide. The greens are Tiff-Eagle Bermuda grass measuring 4,500 square feet. The rough is 419 Bermuda grass measuring 3 inches. Water comes into play on 11 holes. There are 75 bunkers. This is a field of 70 players, no cut. At the end of the week, the top 50 players in the FedEx Cup standings will advance to the BMW Championship at Bellerive. Kind of as I alluded to, I'm not the biggest TPC Southwind fan, but that's not necessarily because TPC Southwind is a bad PGA Tour course. I think it's a perfectly average PGA Tour course. I just don't think it's suitable to host a FedEx Cup playoff event. Especially if we're really trying to elevate the playoffs and make them feel special and different. And I do think that one of the ways that the PGA Tour is probably never going to be able to make the FedEx Cup playoffs feel like even close to majors or as significant as majors, because we've already learned with LIV that fans do not care about a massive prize pool and players competing for $20 million. Players do. The players are certainly going to be playing very hard this week and over the next 3 weeks, but fans really don't care about how much money golfers are playing for. They need more history. That's why major championships are able to elevate over other professional golf tournaments, because you really feel like when somebody wins a major championship, they become a part of history. And they're going to be in the game, relevant in the game forever. If somebody wins the Masters, you're going to watch that player at the Masters for the rest of your life. Ryan Fox and Aaron Rai are players that are totally thought of differently because of the majors that they won this year. If Aaron Rai or Ryan Fox were to randomly win the FedEx Cup this year, I think it'd be a surprise, but I think it would be a footnote in golf history. It would still change the way that we thought of Ryan Fox and Aaron Rai, but it would be kind of more like, gosh, remember that time that like Lucas Glover got really hot in back-to-back weeks in August and, won a couple FedEx Cup playoff events, or won the Wyndham and Memphis back-to-back, or remember that time that Billy Horschel got really hot in the playoffs? That was cool. I think one thing that, outside of the fact that they're probably never going to have history at this event that fans care about, I think venue selection could get them really far in making this feel a little bit different. And that's why I think that actually the February events of Pebble Beach and Riviera, and LA is, great this time of year to host at a golf course like Riviera or Pebble Beach. The weather's better now than it is in February, where it's kind of doom and gloom. I think that venues that fans have a stronger relationship to, like a Riviera or Pebble Beach, both top 20 golf courses in America, would help a lot. And the thing about TPC Southwind is it just feels, and statistically as well, it is just very much like the average run-of-the-mill TPC style, Florida style, water heavy golf course. It's a very similar golf course architecturally to TPC Twin Cities or PGA National. I think that it, like it has an island green, and I think it kind of like wants to be something more like TPC Sawgrass, and it's kind of a sheep in wolves clothing, right? Did I even get that saying right? It is kind of wanting to be something that it's not, and what it really is kind of a better version of TPC Twin Cities or PGA National, which like are completely fine golf courses to host a random PGA Tour event in March or July, but I can't really think of a simple redeeming quality towards TPC Southwind that would lead me to believe that it deserves to be host of one of the PGA Tour's quote unquote biggest events of the season. Now, I don't think it should go away. Like, there's far worse golf courses on the PGA Tour than TPC Southwind. And I understand that the PGA Tour has a very fruitful relationship to FedEx, and that sponsorship is very important to them, very profitable for them. And this golf tournament, does a lot for the Children's Hospital as well. So, that's like another important consideration. So it's more purely a critique of the golf course as a playoff host. And I kind of say something similar about Eastlake, which is better than TPC Southwind, but not by a wide margin. And ultimately how similar those two golf courses are make very little sense in the interest of variety. And this is also kind of my problem with like the majors being so close together now too, is that it's easier for a player to just get really hot during a 2-month period and like pick off a couple great major finishes where, there's most of the top players are now playing like one tournament in between each major. Once you get past the PGA Championship, and I think that there should be like, in the same way that I think that there should be more time within the majors, and that would probably make them feel a little less clumped together, and they'd feel more special and feel like they have more of their own identity because of the competitive starvation that you get with them. Like, why does the Ryder Cup work? I think part of the reason why the Ryder Cup works is because it's every other year. I think if we had the Ryder Cup every year, it would lose a little bit of its luster. And I think the fact that we have, two FedEx Cup playoff events in the Southeast at very similar statistical golf courses, they now look a little bit different because of the renovation that East Lake got, but they play very similar. And I think it's also just like a huge financial advantage to players who are very comfortable on zoysia grass and Bermuda greens and in extremely hot southeastern conditions. Like, if I was a PGA Tour player and I only cared about money, I would like practice so much on Southeastern Bermuda and Tiff Eagle Bermuda, because if you play well in August on Tiff Eagle Bermuda, you can like win over $10 million on the PGA Tour if that's your peak. If you peak now, I think it gives like a huge advantage to players that are really, really good on this style of agronomy and on this style of golf course. And I think it'd be really fun if you had three different, like drastically different playoff events. Like maybe you keep East Lake, but then you do kind of what we used to do, a northeastern bent grass golf course, Parkland's tree lined golf course, and then maybe a California POA golf course. And so you kind of like are able to capture the champion of the season should capture like an ability to kind of tame all of these different golf courses that you play over the season. And it actually feels like a culmination. It feels like you get some representation from the West Coast swing. You get some representation from the Florida swing, which we already are over indexed on. Maybe you get some representation from like a great bent grass golf course in New York or Boston and Chicago. And that feels like you're crowning a more fitting champion for the season. It would be like if every year the wild card round of the playoffs and the Super Bowl, every year they were like, the wild card round, it's going to be at snowy sites. And the Super Bowl, guess what? It's also going to be at snowy sites. So if you're really good in the snow in cold weather, you've got a huge advantage every year in the NFL playoffs. That's completely nonsensical. The NFL would never do that, right? Like that makes no sense. That creates such an advantage for players that are great in those conditions. And there's no variety. It's not a representation of the entire season of golf that was. So anyway, that's rant over. Let's talk more about TPC Southwind and this, the agronomy of it all and the changes that were made. So the golf course really did make kind of an honest effort to improve ahead of last year's tournament. The in-house agronomy team at TPC Southwind is led by Nick Bissons, and he started this renovation in November 2024. It did not get completed until the tournament started last year. So, they had brand new greens last year. The renovation happened mainly because these greens had not been updated since the golf course opened in 1988. The last resurfacing only replaced the top 4 inches. So, they'd been largely untouched since the course's 1988 opening. And all 18 green complexes plus the practice greens were fully rebuilt and resurfaced, which included capturing additional square footage that created a bunch of new hole locations, notably the par 3 Island 11th and the par 5 3rd. Those greens were expanded quite a bit. This was the first time that the golf course even resurfaced the greens since 2004. So the greens are now a bit more undulating and expanded. And despite the expanding of the greens by 200 feet on average, the greens in regulation percentage went down by 4%. And it featured the lowest greens in regulation percentage of the last 5 years and its most difficult scoring average since 2022. Reason for that being like you got really firm weather conditions and new firm greens. So, approach difficulty increased. They accomplished their goal there, but putting difficulty did not. So the Zeon Zoysia grass was sodded around the greens, which created firmer surrounds with better drainage. The around the green difficulty went up, but really just marginally. It made virtually zero difference. Around the green shot percentage from the short grass did go up by 10%. So it seems like they used, a little more short grass around the greens, but Zoysia is so easy to chip off of that it did not make the around the green fairway scrambling any harder. The golf course was also lengthened by 50 yards, and most of it all came on one new tee box, the par 4 fourth, which went from 485 to 529 yards. That hole alone played quite a bit harder last year. The slope, 1.34 last year. So prior to that, the slope was always below tour average. And then last year, the slope shot up, which is often what you see in the first year of renovations. The same thing happened with Detroit Golf Club. So, it didn't change the scoring a whole lot, but the golf course did separate skill a lot better last year in the same way that Detroit Golf Club did, where golf course didn't really get all that much harder to score to par. I guess the par changed at Detroit Golf Club, but I think you get the point. Like the scoring average outside of the par chains was not that much harder, but it separated skill better. The greens and regulation percentage went down. And as is often the case with a renovation, like I said, even if there's not a huge impact on scoring, courses with firmer greens tend to, at a macro level, separate skill more and increase the importance of precision approach play. And that's exactly what we saw last year. Now 2026 is year 2 on these surfaces. The grass has had a full growing season to mature, but that 2025 data is really now the most course representative sample that we have, since anything 2024 and earlier was played on different greens and different surrounds. So, the variance decomposition that it showed very heavy ball striking leaderboard movement from off the tee and approach. And that should be close to what we see going forward, even if the scoring average barely changes. This is typically a golf course that features pretty similar scoring conditions every year. It usually plays around a stroke under par, kind of ranks middle of the pack in difficulty. Southwind is a harder driving golf course than Sedgefield, which can often be explained by the fact that there's still a lot more penalty strokes in play. There's a lot more water. This is more, Sedgefield's kind of more like Innisbrook, and Southwind is kind of more like PGA National, if I was comparing the two. They both have a similar missed fairway penalty. You see that Bermuda rough. But the main thing to monitor is the increasing difficulty of approach on this golf course and whether or not that holds. Approach is typically the toughest aspect of TPC Southwind. It's typically the most important aspect of TPC Southwind, which has a lot to do with the fact that not only were the greens firmer last year, but there are a lot of penalty strokes that come into play on approach, not just off the tee. Completely contrary to Sedgefield, around the green and putting is extremely easy compared to the ball striking aspect of TPC Southwind. And despite getting new greens, this was not some sort of Gil Hanse or Tyler Ray renovation. This was just the in-house agronomy team resodding the greens. The greens themselves were not redesigned by a practicing golf architect. They're still dead flat. They're extremely easy to putt on compared to Sedgefield, which has these great heavily sloped Donald Ross greens. So the key difference between what we saw this past week at Sedgefield and what we will see this week is that Sedgefield is a much harder chipping and putting course, and TPC Southwind is a harder ball striking course and an incredibly easy chipping and putting course. We'll talk about driving right after the break, but also similar to Sedgefield, we are experiencing like a massive over-indexing of short to middle iron play, where we want to focus on that same key range of 100 to 200 yards. Around the green is an aspect of Southwind that is neither descriptive nor predictive, despite the fact that These greens are on the smaller side, and greens in regulation percentage is generally lower than Sedgefield. It's still difficult to chip out a Bermuda rough, but the fairway around the green off Soja is super easy, super super easy bunkers, and same deal with putting. This golf course is some of the flattest greens on tour. It ranks top 5 easiness inside 5 feet, 5 to 15 feet, and from greater than 15 feet. And last thing, weather. Similar to Sedgefield, there's not a ton of weather impact at TPC Southwind. Um, you're going to get those pop up storms from time to time. But if we look at comparing historical conditions to what we should expect this week, what really matters is when I run my weather model for the last 5 years, it's really moisture is kind of the dominant lever here, just like Sedgefield, because it's a venue that, despite being called TPC Southwind, it is a low wind venue. Um, and these dry, firm years kind of cluster around a stroke under par. Um, the soft year could get to minus 1.4. Um, but the wind, but that's about moisture. Wind is a non-factor at Southwind in August. Um, and we're generally like maxing at 10 to 15 mile per hour breezes one day, often 4 to 10 miles per hour. The temperature, the heat is always brutal. You're looking at heat indexes of 103 to 112 every year, um, which living in the valley, we get in California in the summer in August, we get like 107 heat indexes, and it's just about pretty close to unbearable to play golf in. I still do it because I'm a psychopath, but once you get past 105 heat index, um, no one really wants to be outside, let alone playing competitive golf, sweating through your clothes, walking. Um, it's a lot harder walking than taking a cart, obviously. One asterisk to 2025, scoring average last year was minus 0.88 in a dead calm, dry weather year. So, the firmness didn't move the average much more than what the dry conditions already do. Um, it didn't ultimately play all that much harder, and it was dry last year. So I think if we look at this year, expect it to play easier. It's not baked out this year. Pretty normal July rainfall in Memphis, near average, pretty well distributed. Um, you get plenty of rain over the last couple months. On top of that, solid rain hit. Memphis got a solid rain hit yesterday and today. It's going to be a dry and hot Monday through Wednesday, though, leading into the tournament. And once they start playing the golf, hot, humid, couple of daily scattered thunderstorms, mostly sunny in the low 90s with 50% storm chances. Basically looking at the 2023-2024 pattern with storms floating around. You add in the renovated greens, Zoysia surrounds have now had a full season to mature. So you kind of, that fresh sod firmness that popped up in 2025 should be gone, and any storm that lands will make these, pretty generally receptive. So it's going to be a softer year, humid air, daily storm risk, 2-year surfaces, Monday through Wednesday could make it a little drier, but I project a field average of minus 1.1 and a winning score of minus 17. Let's take a very short break, talk about what actually matters here, and then run through our model. Okay, we are back. So, interestingly enough, off the tee here, it's not a pure accuracy golf course like Sedgefield. It's a little more driver heavy. It's favored accuracy 3 out of the last 6 years. 2 out of the last 6 years, it's been neutral, and in 2023, it slightly favored bombers. It driving accuracy is pretty low, but players still hit driver despite kind of a higher missed fairway penalty, which is interesting to me. Probably has to do with the fact that it's a little bit longer than Sedgefield, so it's not the type of golf course that you can just club down everywhere and still have a bunch of wedges. And interestingly enough, about last year, the missed fairway penalty soared without really any reports of them growing the rough up. But it was the hardest rough penalty last year, the last 10 years. So that's really going to be something to monitor this year. My guess for why that is, it was really dry last year, and dry, hot, wispy Bermuda, can often be harder than lush, soft Bermuda. It's one of the only grasses that has that effect where the rough can actually get more challenging when it's dry. And if we look at, accurate players versus inaccurate players, short hitters versus long hitters, like everyone kind of just really performs at their baseline. And this probably explains why off the tee actually gets a marginal downgrade for me. It's not like a golf course like Sedgefield where you really, really need to be super, super accurate. It's so much about the second shot on this golf course. And it's certainly not a distance golf course either. I would prefer accuracy over distance here if forced to choose, but it's really a week to just look at overall off the tee play in comparison to kind of straight accuracy. And it's certainly not a week I care about distance much at all. If we look at our baseline predictive weights and the radar plot, we are seeing pretty sizable downgrades to driving distance and short game, and thus increases to accuracy, approach, and putting, despite the fact that none of those skills are really favored more than tour average. It's just distance and short game are really not predictive here, and everything else is like average predictive. Now, if we bake in the descriptive piece to it, off the tee, small upgrade, approach, major upgrade, around the green, sizable downgrade, putting, sizable downgrade. So from a variance decomposition standpoint, this is like a true ball strikers golf course, which really has a ton to do with how scores spread out based on the amount of penalty strokes that are on this golf course. And so my final weights, I have a slight downgrade to off the tee with a major downgrade to distance and a slight upgrade to accuracy, a major upgrade to approach play, a pretty significant downgrade to around the green play, and a very small upgrade to putting. So when it all shakes out, distance and around the green play are the biggest downgrades. Approach is a massive upgrade, and accuracy and putting are getting very small upgrades. The big takeaway that we have at this golf course, if you're looking to give positives towards certain players, go approach above all else on this golf course. Approach has the strongest combination here of descriptive and predictive. If anything, the newer greens are going to continue to help that, to help great approach players separate here. And if you're giving a break to anything, do not care about how long somebody is here, and don't care about how good their short game is. Super easy around the green here. So I'd just go like approach above everything. Accuracy and putting, I guess, second and third, and then distance and around the green play, DFL for me. So we've got a great field. I was excited to run numbers this week because we've got pretty much everyone. Scotty, I'll just run through my top 20. It's bangers all around. Scotty, Henley, who is always going to rate out on a golf course like this that has such a heavy emphasis on middle iron play. Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Åberg, Victor Hovland, Rory McIlroy, Cameron Young, Sam Burns, Xander Schauffele, Patrick Cantlay, Matt Fitzpatrick, Hideki Matsuyama, JJ Spawn, Jackson Cloyven, Aaron Rye, Jacob Bridgman, Shane Lowry, Ben Griffin, Robert McIntyre, Chris Gotterup, Siwoo Kim, Justin Thomas, Kurt Kitayama, Wyndham Clark. That's the top 25. And if we're saying to ourselves, well, we care about iron play above all else here, and we specifically care about who consistently gains the most strokes on approach, from like that 100 to 200 range. Remember, proximity means nothing. It's not, you're not going to be able to get proximity to stick in a bucket. You want to look at how players are actually gaining strokes on approach from certain distances. And so if we look at my combination, if I take a weighted average of approach where I focus the most on 100 to 200 combined with overall approach play, I'm going to give you some of the guys that really rise up, that are very, very good at this, that are worth looking at this golf course. JJ Spawn is a very, very good short to middle iron player. Siwoo Kim, very, very good short to middle iron player. Adam Scott, very, very good at this. Now he hasn't been very good at anything else, but very good at this. Jackson Cloyven, very, very good at this, despite the sample size not being as high, which is one of the reasons I liked him so much at Sedgefield. And he is, by the way, kind of kicking Cameron Young's ass at Sedgefield. Jacob Bridgman, very good at this, interestingly enough, who finished 17th here last year. I think Bridgman is like a really nice under the radar play for this week. Kurt Kitayama, very, very, very good at this. I think Kurt Kitayama is like a great mid-tier guy. Colin Morikawa, obviously. And then Scheffler. And, well, we'll say there's a couple more that are really good at this. Henley, Connors, Cantlay, Hideki, Tom Kim. So, you're and some of the players that are not as high in my weighted approach model as you would expect. Cameron Young, Xander Schauffele, Tommy Fleetwood, actually, Rory McIlroy, Wyndham Clark. Ludwig actually is quite good. My apologies for leaving Ludwig out of this, who's very solid. But I'm not going to have a lot of Rory this week. Not going to have any Ben Griffin. Certainly not going to have any Harris English, or probably not going to go back to Spieth. You know what? I think it's a really good betting board. I fear Scheffler here. I think everyone should fear Scheffler here. His Z-score is crazy high. He should be plus 350 maybe. I don't think I'll bet him outright, because I think you're going to be able to find a lot of really good opportunities with players in the 20s and 30s. It's such a good field. So even a 70-man field, there's going to be a couple guys that drift to pretty decent numbers. And a lot of these guys are playing good golf, right? Like Fleetwood's playing incredible. Not going to bet Fleetwood, but he's playing great. Um, Ludwig had a very underrated performance at the Open, and is a great golf course for Ludwig. Henley's playing very well, coming off of like a top 10 at the Open and 20th at Rocket Mortgage. Cantlay's playing really well. Cantlay's starting to play some really good golf. Siwoo Kim had like one bad round on Sunday at Rocket Mortgage, but should bounce back for all intents and purposes on this course. Um, Hovland had like a really disappointing Open, but I love this golf course for Hovland. You know, like I'm gonna see where the numbers and like these guys don't rate as highly in my some of my weighted approach stuff, but like Xander looked incredible at Detroit. Um, he finished solo second, gained a ton ball striking, drove the ball straight, hit his irons well. Um, Xander could be percolating big time. Sam Burns is playing like incredible golf and has played great at this golf course before. And I also absolutely love this golf course fit for Morikawa, and I've been chasing a Morikawa win quite a bit this year, and would be pretty sad if I were to miss it on a golf course like this, because it's such a this is such a good golf course for Morikawa. And um, that is all to say, like, Scotty should win this. This golf course is so good for Scotty. It's interesting, like, what's kind of developed as the quote unquote weakest link for Scotty has actually more recently been short game. His driving and approach play has really come around. It was kind of approach play lagging at the beginning of the season. Scotty's hitting the shit out of his irons right now. Scotty's putting great. And like, if there's one golf course where I don't really care if you give a couple strokes back around the greens, or should be very theoretically easy for Scotty to gain around the greens, it's this one. I'm not a without guy, but like in DFS, 70-man cut, I am very high on Scotty this week. I just haven't bet him all year, and probably going to finish out the season that way. I think this is, if I had to guess, um, I think the way that this season's going to end for Scotty is he's going to have a killer FedEx Cup. He's gonna win the FedEx Cup, and we're gonna look at the season. It's gonna be interesting to see the takes on how people feel about Scotty's season, because he was relevant at every major, but never really got to a point with a major where he grabbed the tournament. Um, Even at a Ronnemank where he faded on Sunday, Scotty was still relevant for a lot of that tournament, and he was at the Masters, was at the U.S. Open, um, was at the British Open for a good part of that tournament as well. And it's crazy. He has 5 solo seconds this year. So, you flip half of them, into wins, and he's back winning 3 times again, 3 or 4 times again. And I just think, like, Scotty has proven to be so good on like accuracy over distance. Bermuda is so good at East Lake. He's never won Southwind, but I love Scotty on golf courses with a higher miss fairway penalty with clearly defined hazards. So, I think Scotty. Hot take is a great Southwind course fit. But I think I'll probably probably look very closely at Morikawa and Ludwig. I think I would give a very small edge to Ludwig over Xander, just because of like longer term approach for Ludwig has been better. So I guess my two favorites at the top are Colin and Lud. I do really like Xander though. And I love Fleetwood and Henley, of course, great course fits, more for DraftKings. So Cantlay as well. You guys always know I'm a big Cantlay and a Hovland guy. So it's a great week. And I'm doing a shit ton of travel after next weekend. So this is like my last week of sitting down and watching a ton of golf over the regular season. Or the season that ends with the Tour Championship. I'm really, I really want to finish on a high note. I really care about my year-to-year DFS and betting numbers, and I've really turned this into a great betting year. Really turned it around from like midway through the year, I was like down minus 15 units. And so I really want to hopefully finish on a high note and see if we can capitalize over these next couple events. So good luck to DT tomorrow. Noren, I would prefer even more than Davis Thompson because I have that big DraftKings component for him. And if it is not Davis Thompson or Alex Noren, I would absolutely love it to be Mr. Cuckchair himself, Alex Smalley. So you could probably imagine we're looking at a Tom Kim. Hostler is way better for me. Is a way better outcome for me than Tom Kim or Brennan. So you could. It's probably going to be Tom Kim or Brennan. In which case you can find me at the bottom of the LA River. But thanks for listening to the pod. Appreciate the support on these as always. Give it a like, give it a subscribe if you've loved the pods all year. And we're making some changes that I think hopefully will make them even better in the future and more informative and a little bit more fun as well. Leave those reviews on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All that stuff means a lot. And good luck with your bets tomorrow. Enjoy the August weather, and we're in the middle of summer, my favorite time of year. I got some, like I said, super exciting golf travel that I can't wait to talk about in the near future as well. And we will see you back on this podcast feed tomorrow evening for the DFS show. Cheers.